how one should be relating to each other in a diverse organizational structure where you've got finance, legal people, sales people, marketing people, logistics people, production people, all needing to work together for a common goal.
A whole lot of subcultures, effectively.
A whole lot of subcultures, living and working in different areas of the country as well.
Yeah.
And where is it important to retain some of that unique cultural aspect, and where is it important to have an integrated common approach? And finding that balance is I think what I've learned a lot about.
So that culminated, all of that learning culminated into what I believe is the reason that you were nominated Business Leader of the Year in 2020. Welcome to the AutoBiography, a video series that shines a spotlight on inspiring leaders. It captures their fascinating stories, their personal journeys, and key leadership lessons. It also uncovers secrets to their success. Today, I am privileged to be joined by the President and CEO of Toyota South Africa, Andrew Kirby. We're thrilled to have you here. I'm actually humbled to have you here. You're a legend. You work for definitely the biggest car brand on the continent. I mean, the entire continent's painted in red. So thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. So I thought I'd start off by asking you about your hobbies. What is it that Andrew Kirby does outside of Toyota, if anything?
No, thanks, George. Good to be here. No, I have quite a few hobbies. Most of them are in the area of sport. So as I've got older, I've actually become spending more and more time, with sport. I think once the kids grew up and had a little bit more time to be able to dedicate to that, it's become more and more important for me. So I do a lot of mountain biking.
Oh, wow.
I actually do mountain biking racing as well.
Have you ridden with Mark? Mark from Mercedes?
No, never ridden with Mark. No.
Okay, because Mark's an avid cyclist as well.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No. So I do a lot of riding, and that's been good for my health as well. Just to have an environment where you can de-stress and be out in the mountains. And then I kite surf. So that's been a big passion of mine for many years.
Oh, wow.
It's a rather unique, kind of extreme sport. But
up on the board, doing the whole thing.
Yeah, boosting, jumping, surfing, even foil.
That's difficult. I went to Mauritius just before COVID, actually, and I took kite surfing lessons because I've always wanted to try it. And I eventually, after about 3 days, I got up on the board. But it's difficult to do. I mean, you've got to have a lot of upper body strength.
No, it is tough to learn.
Yes.
But once you do it, it's just it's an incredible sense of freedom. I used to windsurf when I was young, and got into the sport of kite surfing when it was very new. There was no YouTube, there was no coaches, so I taught myself, and just eventually, I do it whenever I can. I would say this year, since the beginning of the year, I haven't been out once. I haven't been able to, but whenever I'm on holiday, I'll kite surf, and when the wind picks up again in Durban, I'll kite surf over weekends.
Tell us a little bit about Andrew as a teenager. What did you get up to? What did you do? Who were you as a teenager?
I think I was an all-rounder. Played a bit of sport. I did fairly well at academics. I didn't excel. I had a couple of big milestones in my teenage years. I moved from the Eastern Cape in high school, halfway through my high school, almost halfway, to Pretoria. And so that was a big change for me. And then broke my neck when I was 15 years old, riding a bicycle.
Wow.
So there were quite a few difficult or challenging situations for me in my teenage years. My dad encouraged me to do, I played almost every sport. Literally played every sport there was. Played rugby, I also played soccer, played hockey. I played tennis, I played squash. And you can go through everything. So I did all the sports, and I enjoyed that. And I think maybe I didn't get into the first team or tour when I was a teenager, but later in life it's been really useful to be able to have all of those skills, and I've tried to pass them on to my kids as well.
That's incredible. So in kind of going through those teenage years, what did you dream about? What were your aspirations? What did you want to become? Because that's most of the kids get asked, what do you want to become?
I didn't really have such a clear idea of what did I want to become. I think I admired my father. He was in the automotive industry.
Oh.
He was in a senior position in the corporate world, and I thought that was cool. I thought I could see myself being in corporate. I could see myself hopefully rising to be an executive, not necessarily the motor industry.
Yeah.
In fact, my father tried to dissuade me from joining the motor industry. Later on in my teenage years, I felt I wanted to be an engineer, and that is what I did pursue, but I didn't really have a clear image of I want to be X, Y, and Z at all.
Like I was
fairly open. No, I want to be a family man, I want to be a good husband, I want to be a man of faith. That's important to me, but I didn't have a very clear career goal at all.
It sounds to me like you had a good base of principles that you wanted to kind of pursue, but not really saying, I want to be X.
No, not at all.
So, fast forwarding through your life and, especially after you turn 40, because I found that after you turn 40, something kind of changes. I'm not saying it's at 40, but in your 40s, something changes in you. You maybe start to mature as a man more, I don't know, but something changes in you and your thinking begins to evolve. Did you find that, and how did your thinking evolve over your adult life from when you were a teen?
Yeah, so I had a few different phases, I think. In my 20s, I got married, I started having children. I'd already, late 20s, joined the automotive industry and already started to formulate ideas around management, working with people, and then had the opportunity to go and live in America. I lived and worked there for 3 years, and that had a big influence on me. I would honestly say the first 3 months I didn't know what they were talking about, even though they were speaking English. I really thought I'd joined a different industry. And
did you work in the automotive industry?
I was in the automotive industry, working in North America, and after 3 years I was flourishing. So it was a big opportunity for me to learn to work cross-culturally, work with very divergent views and ways of thinking. I spent some time on the East Coast and some time on the West Coast. It was like a different country.
Yeah.
And that was really good for me. I think when I got into my 40s, I took over as head of sales marketing for Toyota. That was a big role for me, and it took a lot of adjustment and learning to work with a very different culture, learning to work with the Japanese, which took me some time, and understand, wow, they're successful. What makes them tick. And then a little bit later on, actually moving to Japan and living in Japan and working there and taking an executive role in Japan, I think really formulated a lot of my thinking. Finding ways of, in the beginning, I think when you're younger, you focus on your functional area, on how you can be an expert, on how you can really understand the detail. I always wanted to break through with something. What was going to be unique, what was going to be a breakthrough. And later on in life, it's a lot more about weaving things together, finding ways of integrating the divergent teams, a lot more thinking around our culture, about how we make decisions, about what are the challenges for the next 10 years. I think when you're young, I was thinking about the challenges for the next month. And now I'm very focused on 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
So I think your horizon changes, your breadth of thinking changes, the way you think about working with people, I think that changed a lot. I think the way I thought about myself changed a lot.
And so if you had to kind of think about how your thinking's evolved over the time, and you could, get access to a time machine, and you could go back to your teenage self, what advice would you give your teenage self? What would you say? Do exactly what you did, or would you change something?
Be a bit more adventurous.
Okay.
I think I was a bit too worried about what my next step would be, whether I would be successful. I was driven, but I think I'd say to myself, relax, be a bit more adventurous, things will work out, and take time to enjoy the present. Not always striving for the holiday or the next job or the project finishing, but actually just enjoying where you are at the moment, the people you're with, and not be too worried about the future.
The future.
Yeah.
So I mean, that kind of leads me to heroes and mentors. Did you have any in your lifetime, and what did you see in them that you were striving for?
So I wouldn't say particularly heroes, but there were a lot of remarkable people that I worked with, had the privilege of working with, and had a significant influence on my life. One of the first leaders was Eric Papke, who gave me tremendous opportunities. He really opened the doors for me to do very different things, to work in environments that were new, structured new organizational structures for me. Yeah, I really owe a lot of some of my own personal development to him. I learned a lot from Ian Robinson, who was the CEO of BMW, and then went to take on a board position in Germany, and then working for 14 years. I reported directly for 14 years to Dr. Johan van Zyl. So spent a lot of time with him, and he became more and more like a mentor to me, especially when he was living in Europe. And I think his approach with people, I think the way he managed meetings, the way he could disarm difficult situations and conflict, his line of questioning, his set of priorities, I think have had a big influence on me. An icon really like Brian Pretorius, who I never overlapped with and worked directly in an organization, but have had a lot of industry-related interactions with him, and we often get an opportunity to talk, and he's also influenced.
It's another legend in the industry.
He's an absolute legend. Absolute legend. And still is, So I think those are people who've had a big influence.
So talking about your journey to Toyota, you started at BMW, if I'm correct.
I actually started in the mining industry.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
As an engineer, I went into Anglo-America, worked in the gold mining industry for
That was
for
the
3.5
engineering
years.
drive.
That was the engineering side. Yeah.
Okay.
So I worked for 3.5 years, and then left the mining industry and joined BMW.
Okay. And your stint at BMW, how long did that last?
11 years.
11 years,
which
okay.
included 3 years in North America.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, that was the 3 years in North America you were speaking about a bit earlier.
Correct.
On. Okay, that was with BMW, and then you kind of shifted gears and went to Toyota. Tell us about that transition. What caused the shift? Was it an opportunity that came by you? Were you looking for an opportunity? What was the circumstances around that move?
No, typically I'm a loyal person by nature, and I wasn't looking at all, and it was the last thing that had come across my mind. But there was a fairly clever headhunter who disguised himself as a customer, and he said he had a customer complaint, and I contacted him to see how I could help, and he eventually persuaded me to at least look at the opportunity. And the more I looked into it and started having discussions with Johan van Zyl, he was very persuasive. And it was a good opportunity for me. It was a promotion for me. It was a bigger job. I think the scale of Toyota is obviously very different. And the opportunity to work in a company that had very strong local leadership. So I had thought through from a career point of view the opportunities that would bring as well. Yep, and I took the plunge.
So once you'd taken that plunge, and now you're over at Toyota, 11 years in BMW. What were your learnings or lessons in the role right at the beginning? What did you face that you had never faced before in your role at Toyota? Because now you've shifted brands, different culture, like you say, Japanese. You have to start learning to work with them. Whereas BMW, German brand. Different culture. You had been in America for a while. What were your kind of teething time? What was your teething time like right at the beginning?
It was tough. I really struggled for the first few years. My experience up until that point had been in a fairly dynamic environment where there was a lot of responsibility on individuals to perform, but you were given the latitude to move fairly dynamically. Not a lot of checks and balances, and it was a lot about the individual's personality to a degree. Obviously teamwork was important, but it was more dynamic. Moving Toyota was completely the opposite. It was a lot more about consensus building. It was a lot more about getting, at that stage, a lot of input from Japan and getting their approval. And I struggled with that in the beginning. Over time started to learn the value of it, because the process in Toyota is a lot of very detailed thought and preparation and very fast execution. And I'd been used to not a lot of thought, execute, but then rework, to get it to where you need it to be. And both have their value.
Merit, yeah.
They have their merit. I mean, that's typically what you might do in an IT environment.
Yes.
So, but in our environment, I could understand that you can't really get things wrong. You need to do it correctly in the beginning, and if you can get as many voices as possible into the discussion and think through all the possible parameters, then the quality of the execution is much faster and better. Anyway, so that was an adjustment for me to understand. There was a lot of old school thinking at the time, and that's obviously why Jan brought me into the business, was to bring some reform.
Yeah, some new blood, as they call it.
He didn't tell me as much, so I had to work my way through that and try and accelerate, the pace of change and bring Toyota into being a lot more advanced in our thinking and more leading edge, in many of our ways of doing things. So those were the challenges, and I think working with the Japanese actually ended up being very, very easy, and I really valued their input. They were much quicker to want to change. It was the local organization that took a little bit of time to adjust. So those were the teething points.
So then you got an opportunity to go and work at Lexus in Japan. Tell us a little bit about how that occurred. What was your role at Lexus in Japan?
So I was responsible for product planning and marketing globally for Lexus.
Okay, so up to that point in time, you were head of marketing in South Africa.
Head of sales and marketing
in
for South Africa.
For Toyota.
Yes.
And then you got the role head of marketing globally, but had to work in Japan.
Correct.
For this role.
Correct.
How did that occur? Why did you take the opportunity?
So as part of my personal development, Toyota had a global program for executives to go and take on line function roles, and Lexus in particular was very open to a foreigner working in that environment because it was a mixture of people from all over the world with fairly good English skills.
Okay.
And my role when I got there, and I didn't appreciate it as much before, but when I got there was actually to work with the overseas markets.
Okay.
So I went to Japan, but then traveled overseas all the time.
Oh, wow.
Which was great because I learned so much from my time in China, America, Europe, Australia. I literally traveled all over the world, trying to find a way of having a global approach to the Lexus brand.
Okay.
Surprisingly, at that point in time, there wasn't a singular global approach to managing the Lexus product planning or marketing.
Oh, wow.
And so we created at that stage what is now referred to as Lexus International, and that's now the headquarters for Lexus. So it was a really fun time to be involved.
And then after the Lexus stint, how long were you in that role for?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. You mentioned before we started that when you moved back, you didn't quite know what role you were going to come back into. Tell us a little bit about that, and then how you ended up on your journey to where you are now.
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. Johan said to me before I left for Japan, by the way, you're not coming back to a position in Santon office. I said, should I sell my house? He said, yes. So sold my house while I was in Japan. And it was only about 3 months before I came back that he actually told me what my role was going to be. We had a talk about different opportunities. And eventually what transpired was I came into what was a corporate services role. So it incorporated finance, HR, business planning, and IT. Very, very different functions to anything I'd been involved with before.
Yeah.
But really important to understand as a business leader, and getting involved in the IR issues, the union issues on the HR side, and succession planning and people development, and then obviously on the finance side, and really managing the finances of the business. So later on I became the CFO as well, so it was a real challenge for me to do something completely different.
Oh, wow. So 3 months before you left Japan, you were kind of like, now the veil was lifted, and this was your new corporate role.
Correct.
And then from there, your journey to president and CEO of Toyota. Tell us about that journey, and then to present day.
Yeah, so to put it into perspective, I've had 19 roles in my career, right? So different jobs. I couldn't predict any of them until the last two.
Oh, really?
I knew that when I'd come back into this corporate role, and we had discussed it, that Johan was positioning me to take over from him. And obviously, I needed to fulfill certain things. I didn't really have an idea of what the timing was, and I wasn't too concerned about it. And he just exposed me to more and more. He said, your job is to understand manufacturing while you're down there. And obviously run the corporate services operation.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I think, the manufacturing team were very gracious to me and brought me into their fold and taught me, about the whole operation, which is a very different world.
Did you find your engineering background had benefit?
It helped tremendously. No, it helped tremendously because I could understand the technical aspects of it. And I was interested. I am interested in it. I love it. Yeah.
Yes.
So
the basis was kind of there.
The basis was there, but the mindset and the culture and the way of thinking to run a successful production operation is very, very different, dissimilar to a sales and marketing operation.
Okay.
I was able to learn that, and then I was asked to take over a role as Chief Operating Officer, and 3 months later I became CEO. And what happened was Johan van Zyl was then promoted to take over for Toyota in Europe.
Okay.
And that role came open, and I was put into that role.
Which year was that?
In 2016.
2016.
Yep.
Being CEO and having this journey through BMW, more so Toyota, because you've obviously been with Toyota for a lot longer. What have you learnt about business culture and people along the way? What are the things that you've taken out of that journey from a business culture point of view?
How important it is. It's almost the foundation of any organization. And I often say to people, the numbers, financial figures, sales numbers, don't actually reflect the capability and capacity of an organization. And the corporate culture is one of those elements that's so important. And what I particularly like and appreciate about Toyota, and I think it's a distinguishing aspect, is our view of corporate culture is not just the soft elements of how you work together or how you relate. It's also the business processes of how you make a decision. How do you respond in a time of crisis? What do you say when things go wrong? Because I think you can tell a lot more about an organization when they have times of difficulty than when things go well.
Yes.
Or a lot more about a team, where things go poorly.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I'm particularly proud of over the last 8 years is building a lot of those elements and strengthening what was obviously very well established, and taking from what I've seen all over the world and trying to put some of these things in place. So a team that doesn't collapse when there's a crisis, that says, okay, this is what it is, this is how we approach it, this is how we need to respond. And it worked well for us during the flood disaster. But I think I've learned a lot about how one should be relating to each other in a diverse organizational structure, where you've got finance, legal people, sales people, marketing people, logistics people, production people, all needing to work together for a common goal.
A whole lot of subcultures, effectively.
A whole lot of subcultures, living and working in different areas of the country as well.
Yeah.
And where is it important to retain some of that unique cultural aspect, and where is it important to have an integrated common approach? And finding that balance is I think what I've learned a lot about.
So that culminated, all of that learning culminated into what I believe is the reason that you were nominated Business Leader of the Year in 2022, centered around the way you led and handled the floods that you just spoke to. So tell us a little bit about how you dealt with the culture and made sure that what you just kind of unpacked around difficult times, how you made sure that the teams came through that and that the business came through that. Because I'm pretty sure it's no surprise that Business Leader of the Year 2022 was nominated or given to you as a result of the way you handled those floods. So tell us a little bit about the challenges that occurred there, what the things were that you kind of said, okay, well now I know that what I've been doing all along is working through this tough time.
You know, the first thing, I think I really don't see the award as for my personal leadership. It was really the team, because we wouldn't have got through it if it wasn't for a really deep level of personal leadership that was taken in so many different areas. And I only played one small part, quite honestly. And I think we had the COVID area as well. We had the riots in 21, and we were able to build some dynamics in play that helped us when we eventually ended up with this disaster. The other thing I would say is that it wasn't just about the local team. We had massive global support. So I was absolutely blown away. And if I can quickly tell you the story, I mean, it happened on the 12th of April. Couldn't even get on site that day. We happened to have had an executive from Japan visiting us. We said, well, you can't come to our site. Let's go to the Beverly Hills Hotel. And we met there, and the executive said, well, I think you need to send Akio Toyota a personal video message. Pulled out his iPad and said, speak. So I told Akio what had happened, and I shared with him how we were going to approach it. And within a day, he had dispatched one of the most experienced production experts in Toyota to help coordinate the activities. And after that, it was meetings that, it didn't matter if it was a public holiday, weekends with senior people in Toyota globally, and then people being dispatched from all over the world, and then lots of affiliates helping us to source the parts. We ordered 100,000 replacement parts, wow. And we had to find these from all over the world. We still haven't received all of them. So it was a massive team effort. Our suppliers, and obviously our employees. So I don't take any of the recovery for granted. I think it was a small miracle, honestly. I think the leadership team did well, but there were many things that happened that enabled us to recover the way they did. Yeah. I went to TMC and I said, look, we've got a cash flow problem, right? I've got containers of parts coming in, I've got vehicles coming in, I'm not producing anything, I'm not earning any income. Within 4 days, I got an eye-watering loan from Japan. Wow. So tremendous support. The DTIC even helped me with some timing issues around duties. So there were a lot of circumstances that all played its role. From a leadership learning point of view, there were many things that I think were reinforced and also that we learned anew. The one was just setting priority sequences, and I refer to it as a sequence because often leaders talk about, here are my 10 priorities or 5 priorities, but we actually have a priority sequence at Toyota that we established many years ago. I established it in 2017 when we had a small flood. And it was, focus first of all on the people, on their safety and their health, then on the communities around us, including our dealers and suppliers, and then only on our operational recovery.
Okay.
And that was very useful during COVID. Same thing applied, right? Same thing applied. And so when we got to the flood, first thing we did was, this is our priorities, this is what we're going to do, contact every single employee, focus on that. And it really, I think, gave everyone a sense of confidence that, okay, this is what we need to do. It feels right.
Yes.
It feels right. I'm happy about that. And
no one went into panic mode.
Nobody went, no, I think it was more shock and just, there's a lot of emotion. When you saw yes. 87 hectares under 1.5 meters of mud, it was heartbreaking.
Yes.
Right? And even after 4 weeks, there were times when we thought, we don't know if we're going to get out of it because there's still so much mud. But knowing that you could create the sequence, and then, we created a theme, and we created a structure to say, okay, our theme is rebuilding better together. Why? And we explained it, and how we're going to go about it. And so I think as a leadership team, we all know now how important it is to communicate, create that framework, create that way of thinking, create the priorities, articulate it well. We communicated with our dealers more during that time than we normally would, more to our suppliers than we normally would, because we needed to, and we didn't know
when we would recover. Continued? Have some of those
yes, they've definitely continued, and the nature obviously needed to change. Yes. But we also needed to be quite honest with them and say we didn't know when we were going to recover, but we would. we're not relocating, we are rebuilding, we do have global support. Don't worry, we'll get this right, and we'll share with you what we know when we know. So, yeah, that was part of that story. And honestly, I could speak for an hour on the leadership lessons, but maybe just a few stories. The one was we had literally graduate trainees with us. They'd only been with us for 3 months after coming out of varsity. We said, right, we need you to lead this team. Do something that we wouldn't normally do, right? Because all the jobs during the production recovery were unscripted.
Yeah.
Everything was unscripted, right? There was no production to run. You were doing something else.
Something else, like, I mean, I saw
and they were
scrubbing parts. And
if you need to scrub parts, you did it, right? If you organized the incoming replacement equipment, or you're helping with the logistics, that was what you did. And after 6 months, their roles changed, and we matured them into different roles. But I would honestly say after 6 months, those young graduates probably learned more than they would have in 5 years. Over 6 months, they'd learned more than they would in 5 years.
Wow.
So I think just giving young people the opportunity to really stretch themselves, and the tremendous growth, and in an unstructured environment.
Yeah.
Sometimes we create too much structure.
Yeah.
So I think it was very heartening, for us, and wonderful to see. I think the elements around communication were really important. Just again, maybe one simple story, but Leon Turan, who heads up our sales and marketing operations, said, Andrew, I think we should bring some dealers to come and see. And I thought, what are they going to think? They're going to be really worried about the future.
Yeah.
We said, no, okay, that's fine, let's do that. And of course, we were all very busy trying to arrange the recovery. And their comments afterwards blew us away completely. We ended up with tremendous support from the dealer network. We brought more and more dealers to come and see what we were doing. We brought all our suppliers in, we brought the city in, we brought the provincial government people in. Often when you're in a crisis, you internalize, you focus on dealing with the crisis issues, but you don't reach out enough.
Yes.
And we fell into that and started reaching out a lot more and recognized, actually, this is really valuable. And we learned from what they were seeing with fresh eyes. It was very encouraging for us. And we got a lot more moral support, from people, but also very practical support. And then we went out and said, well, we need to tell our customers that we're not relocating, that we're not stopping production in South Africa. And we put a slapdash advert together on TV. It wasn't a studio production, and that was received extremely well, because it just was a very real explanation of what we were and the fact that we would recover. So those were nice lessons from a communication point of view for us.
But underlying that is that kind of philosophy of the people, the customers, and then the consumers, effectively.
Exactly.
And that you had that almost, I wouldn't say scripted, but it was kind of part of your ethos as a leadership team.
It was already established.
Yeah. And that kind of saw you through managing a time where you didn't know what the outcome was going to be.
Exactly.
Effectively.
No, exactly.
So well done. Everybody was watching with bated breath, didn't know what was going to go on. How was this going to turn out? But I'm glad it's turned out the way it has. So Toyota, if we kind of shift a little bit to the brand of Toyota, has been market leader now for 43 years consecutively, market leader. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was actually a Joe Rogan podcast. It was a different context, but his comment just stuck with me. And I don't know if the internet follows you around more than we think, because I was preparing for this interview, and then suddenly I was served with a YouTube video by Joe Rogan that had the word Toyota in the headline. Okay. So I think there are things that follow us around that we don't know about. But anyway, so my point is really, Joe Rogan's comment was, Toyota makes bulletproof cars. They last for 30 years. And it kind of made me sit up and pay attention, because I know the Toyota Corolla. The Toyota Corolla is almost bulletproof. The Toyota Hiace is probably bulletproof. Besides building a really good product that is almost bulletproof, how has Toyota managed 43 consecutive years as market leader?
I think that we've been very fortunate with the product development because we're not responsible for developing new products. We rely on what is designed in Japan, and we've been very fortunate that the products have evolved at a really good pace, and we've ended up with a diverse product lineup. We're able to participate in the small passenger car segment, the SUVs, the larger passengers, the light commercials, the pickups, the vans, the taxis. We're very, very privileged to have an incredible lineup of vehicles. But I think our success is more around how we manage the business. Yes, our product planning is good, and yes, we do all the research to understand what our customers really need. But the business of selling cars, I think, is where we have excelled. Number one, our dealer network is definitely the strongest, I think the strongest, in South Africa, and one of the strongest in the world. And our relationship with them as business partners is really mature. I don't know any other way to describe it. It's a partnership.
It's solid.
And solid, it's a partnership. It's open discussion, quick feedback. We don't have an environment where the dealers can't complain or can't criticize. They can. And we take it, and value it and encourage it. On the other hand, we don't have a situation where dealers try and manipulate things. We all understand, and they even work together.
Yeah.
And that's taken decades. So I can't claim that. I mean, that's really been built up over a long period of time, and I think that's been one of our big success points. Customer care is a big one as well. There's always room for improvement. I often get customer complaints, but I think we're getting better and better. And how we respond to our customers is really crucial because, again, often the customer's perception of us is not what happens when things go right.
Yeah.
Or if there are no problems. It's what happens when there are problems.
Like you were saying with the teams earlier.
Like I was saying with the teams. The same applies for customers. If you respect what they're saying and appreciate their experience and do whatever you can, to create that wow experience, that goes a long way. And we have a lot of focus on our after sales area because that's such a crucial aspect of selling cars. People don't think of it that way.
It's true though.
But it is actually the foundation.
Yeah.
So I think there are many elements that have really helped us. It's not one thing. I think we've got fantastic systems. Our IT systems are world class. We've got great marketing. I think we appeal to South Africans as though we're a local brand.
Yes.
We try and position ourselves as a local company.
Hilux and Fortuna. I mean, how much more local can you get?
Exactly, and the way we do our commercials is all about South African humour and what South Africans want to aspire to. So I think those are some of the things that have helped us.
I suppose what I'm hearing is that, in order to have a successful business, there's a couple of layers. You've got to have a good product, bulletproof product. You've got to have a good product. But the layers around that product are just as important as a good product. You can't just, something's not going to sell itself. You've got to have those layers, good culture, really good sales and marketing operation, and then really good after-sales service, which I suppose fits into the sales and marketing part of the business. So if we shift gears a little bit, we're very humbled at AutoTrader that you've asked us to be part of the Gazoo Racing initiative team, and we've had 2 drivers in your lineup now, back-to-back years. So we're probably doing something right with your cars. So, we had Sean that was racing last year.
Well. Yeah.
Did pretty well, and this year we've got Chad that's racing, and I think Toyota has. I see a light in those 2 guys' eyes that just whenever you start to talk about how they're doing at the GR Cup races, their eyes light up. So Toyota's changing kind of. They're never going to forget this. So it's really, we're fortunate that we've been part of it. But what everybody I think doesn't know, or most people don't know, is that you actually raced. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, the opportunity. Well, in fact, I said to Leon, look. Let's add another car and create an opportunity for some of us to participate. With everything that went on with the flood disaster, I couldn't participate in the beginning of the year. So I said to Leon, look, just book me for the very last race of the year and I'll try and find a way of making time.
Had you been experienced in racing before?
No, I've never done any racing ever in my entire life.
Okay.
I've been on a track many times. I've done advanced driving, I've done high-speed driving, I've done testing in Japan, I've done a lot of high-speed racing, but to actually race on a racetrack against other competitors, watching your lap time is a completely different story. So
I've never done it, so I'm like jealous.
I had a few opportunities to go and do some practices. It was a massive learning curve for me.
Oh, wow.
It was nothing like what I envisaged. I think a lot of people think they'd love to drive fast. It's a different world when you're on a racetrack.
Really?
The margins are so small. Literally centimeters make a difference to the time, and I learned a tremendous amount. I was very fortunate because the GR Yaris, being a four-wheel drive, is such a forgiving car. So my first, few laps, if I went overcooked into a corner, I could recover.
Okay.
Because it's such a forgiving
drive,
such a forgiving vehicle, and just so well balanced. So, as a first time out on the racetrack, it was absolutely the ideal car to try in. But no, it was exhausting. I think the adrenaline is right there, and a fantastic experience. And I really enjoyed it.
Jeez,
I've learned a lot from it.
That's incredible. I mean, I think that must be one of the most adrenaline-pumping moments is to be in a pack of high-speed cars.
Absolutely.
And you've got to actually trust your competitor to a large degree. That they're not going to run into you.
Oh, some of them did.
So moving to this wonderful world of EVs, and where we find ourselves, and whenever you think that the world is the way it is, someone comes and pulls a rabbit out of a hat. And we saw that with your Toyota Cross last year. And we, like everybody else, EVs. Toyota goes and gets the price point right at under 500,000 Rand, an efficient car, it's saving the planet to a certain degree, and this thing flies off the shelves. So I suppose my question is, how does the Toyota Cross fit into your business strategy, and what does the future look like for new energy vehicles for Toyota? Specifically in South Africa, where it feels like we're pushing water uphill with government regulation, and it's difficult to get there. Toyota is kind of like pulled the rabbit out of the hat. But now, what's the next phase? What do we got to look forward to?
It's a complicated topic. I think, obviously we're going to be moving towards very low or zero emission vehicles in our entire lineup. The question is how we're going to get there, and there's a lot of discussion around the future being only battery electric vehicles. I don't believe that that's going to be the case. And I think it's going to take longer to get those costs down than what some people are anticipating. So our approach globally and in South Africa is to have a diversified approach and say, let's be realistic about our market conditions, how our customers use the vehicles, the different usage requirements from fleet customers to people wanting to use them in their farms, to private usages. The different technologies are going to have pros and cons in different areas, and we need to be quite thoughtful about how we introduce the different technologies, because it's all very well and good to say I can bring in a battery electric version of a Fortuner, for example.
Yeah.
But if I tell you what the price point it would be, nobody will buy it. It's not about the technology solution, it's about how does the customer see the value?
Yes.
What's the value for the customer, and how will the market respond? So with hybrid, we knew that we could have the quickest impact on our overall CO2. And we also knew that we could get it at a price point that would be really appealing. But we're a little bit concerned about how would customers feel about driving a hybrid vehicle with the dynamics that go with that. To be honest, I was bullish. I had to be bullish to justify, but I underestimated it. From very soon on, we suddenly had a 60% order bank on hybrids only. So South African customers responded very well, and everybody that I've spoken to that's driven the hybrid will only now drive a hybrid in the future.
Yeah.
So now we have another problem, because I need to create a lot more hybrids.
Yes.
But we also know that as the technology advances, the plug-in hybrid is a really cool solution.
Yes.
Because you can drive to work and back 5 days a week, 0 emissions.
Yes.
It's got enough range to do that. And if you want to go away for the weekend,
you can.
You've got the hybrid advantage. And you don't have the anxiety of can you find a charger or not. But you can charge it overnight at home, and it's really an efficient.
And you can do the school run, the shop run, everything.
You can do everything you want to.
Yeah.
I mean, I commute 45 k's one way. I can get to work and back on
just on battery.
Just on battery. The price points are a little bit high, so we're working on trying to get that down. And obviously, if we can get government support, that will really help to accelerate the transition, and this is going to be important for us. But we also know battery electric vehicles are an appealing proposition, especially with smaller vehicles where the cost premiums will not be as high, and with premium vehicles where customers will be prepared to pay for that premium. And that's where we are in South Africa. It's only premium vehicles that are selling with BEVs.
Yes.
But we're investing in it heavily globally, and we're really hoping that in the next few years we'll be able to bring in some really competitive BEV drivetrains as well. And we've just brought in 2 fuel cell vehicles as well to Mirai.
Yes.
Because we think that that's an important solution, especially for larger vehicles.
I suppose trucks.
Trucks, buses, maybe even larger SUVs.
Okay.
Because when you get to larger vehicles, the weight of the battery pack now starts to compromise the overall efficiency of the package. So we're looking at all of those, and whilst we haven't introduced it in South Africa, we even think that carbon neutral fuel, ICE engines, is an important consideration. Biofuels or even hydrogen gas.
Okay.
So we're doing a lot of testing on that as well. So it's quite exciting, but I think we all know that we don't know quite how this is going to move. What I know now is very different to what I knew a year ago. So we're taking a very pragmatic approach. How do we make sure we move quickly, don't box ourselves into a technology that could be outdated within 2 years?
Yeah.
Also make sure that when customers buy our cars, they have a really good resale value in 5 to 10 years' time.
Yes.
I don't want to be selling a product that I think could be defunct in a few years' time.
Yeah.
So how to find that balance is really important for us. The other big challenge for us is that our business model is very reliant on our production operations. So we sell 65% of the local vehicles sold are produced in South Africa, and we export about 50% of our vehicles. So we need the balance between production volume, exports, and local sales to make sure that our cars are really competitive in South Africa.
Yes.
However, Europe is transitioning to BEVs very quickly. So it means I need to transition local production to BEV production very quickly.
Wow.
So it's a level of complexity that has been really challenging to manage. But I don't want to lose the exports to Europe, and I need that, but it might help me accelerating the transition in South Africa.
Because of that pressure.
Because of that pressure.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we're fortunate in South Africa in that we have all of the OEMs have this pressure and are all producing and supplying vehicles that are global standard vehicles.
Yes.
And even the importers, it's global standard vehicles. So we're not a country that is in any way disadvantaged with our product range. The only issue is we don't have a government that has a specific incentive to support that accelerated transition, which I think is very important. I think they acknowledge that, but they're trying to work through the details so that we have a clever solution that we can afford as a country.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the complexities. The complexities are high. But I read something the other day. You've got a new CEO in Toyota now.
Correct.
That's coming
1st of April.
1st of April, right? But your previous CEO, he said something that really struck home with me. And that was, and I'm going to paraphrase it, I'm not going to get it verbatim, but he said that Toyota wants to produce the widest possible range of vehicles that can service the widest possible range of consumers. And I think everything you've just said kind of speaks to that.
Absolutely.
Is not boxing yourself, trying to really, you're almost hedging your bets by making sure that you're selling to the widest range of consumers, and then taking this almost, I wouldn't say a wait and see approach, but it's a case of we will sell what the consumer wants, and then we will learn from everyone else, including our consumer, and then we will make the move. Because Aren't you using Lexus as a brand for the test bed for BEVs?
So Lexus is already 45% hybrid in South Africa.
Yeah.
And we'll go to 100% non-pure ICE very, very quickly.
Because Lexus is that premium kind of segment,
Lexus
right?
is the premium segment. So there's a lot of good R&D into Lexus as a brand, and we'll bring in plug-in hybrid Lexus vehicles, and we'll bring in BEV Lexus vehicles very quickly. And
so that will be the kind of almost test for Toyota locally, to see how those are taken up. I know it's in a different segment of the market, but it'll be the foot in the door after the Toyota Cross.
Yes, a lot of it's driven by availability of product.
Yeah.
If I had a BEV Toyota, I'd launch it straight away anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting for Lexus. So I don't see that as a sequence. It's useful because the product development there is quite advanced.
Yeah.
But I think in the next 5 years, we're going to have quite a wide range of new energy vehicles across plug-in hybrids, BEVs. As the products become available and at the right price points, we'll launch them as quickly as we can.
Yeah. So your new CEO coming into the seat on the 1st of April seems to be a lot more new energy vehicle focused, and seems to have embraced the NEV range quite a lot. I know it's early days, but from everything I've read, he seems to have kind of embraced a little bit of a new energy vehicle stance in his.
He was also previously head of the GR brand as well, so that's exciting.
Okay.
So I think we're going to see a lot more racing GR brand vehicles at the same time.
Right, so as we wrap up, I want to get some takeouts from you in terms of your role as CEO, and now you've got a few decades of experience, and you've had to manage many stakeholders, and I'm a baby being CEO for almost 20 years versus you, and so I have this challenge quite often, and I want to understand how you manage this challenge, and that the challenge is being in the center. You have staff pulling on you as a stakeholder. You've got shareholders pulling on you as a stakeholder. You've got your senior executive team pulling on you as a stakeholder, and quite often a lot of those pulls are I say it with respect, self-serving. They want to get across the line what they want to get across the line, and it's for that particular reason. So, and you're the little bit of the piggy in the middle, being CEO, having all these pulls. Shareholder wants profitability, staff want salaries and incentives, customers want different things, suppliers want different things. How do you manage that pull on your time, on your energy, and in your role?
With difficulty. That's a good question. I think the one answer is that I've tried to create over the last few years a team that has a company-wide perspective. It didn't always used to be like that, and I can honestly say head of our manufacturing operations in Durban has a really good understanding of the other functions in the company.
Okay. Transparency.
Head of our sales understands and appreciates the challenges in Durban and the production operations. Our corporate roles have spend a lot of time across all the different functions, so that there's a bigger level of capacity that can deal with the company-wide issues. I think that's important, and we're big enough that I've been able to do that. And I think that's really important. So I really enjoy working with the team, and I know they've got my back, and I know that they know that they can rely on me. The other part of it is balancing the different pulls on my time is difficult. And I'll be honest, I don't always get it right. I find myself in 6 to 8 hours of meetings a day. Probably is not ideal. Try and have a little bit of an open door policy where people really need to see me, I want to be available. So sequencing the priorities, I think, is the key trick. What are the big projects, what are the big picture issues? Am I spending enough time on those? And then try and let the rest of the team deal with the other things. And just spending time with the team that report directly to me, enough time with them, I think is really important. Otherwise you end up with gaps. Yeah, it's not easy. There are times when I wonder if I did the right thing. But at the other side of the coin, it's really rewarding. I think I'm making a difference. I get up in the morning wanting to do the job because I think I can make a difference, and I want to not just make a difference in South Africa, but in South Africa. And as my vision started to grow to saying, well, what can we do with the communities around us? What can we do for the country? How do we add value? How can our corporate citizenship role enlarge? That's motivating for me, and I enjoy working with people.
Yes.
I don't like the video conference meetings. I want to be face to face, and I get a lot of energy out of that. I get energy out of people.
You and I are exactly the same. This work from home thing just doesn't work for me.
Actually, I find it quite stressful.
Yes, I find it more stressful. Exactly right. Exactly right. What does the day in the life of Andrew Kirby look like? Do you have a morning routine? How do you structure your day? And then do you have an evening routine? Because, quite often these management gurus and leadership gurus, and, you'll see them on YouTube, like, do these things, structure it like this. And I'm not so sure it's exactly like that. So what is the day in the life of Andrew Kirby?
So I do have a morning routine. I mean, obviously I travel, and the days I travel, it's a little bit odd. But I get up at between 4:30 and 4:45 in the mornings. I then have a devotion, and that's really important for me. Spend some time praying, reading scripture, and that kind of just, focuses me and gives me the right perspective. And then I exercise. So I exercise for about an hour.
Okay.
But I don't exercise for the sake of exercising. I'm always watching my metrics, and I'm training for something.
Okay.
That's just the way I am. So, and then I'll look at my emails, have breakfast, and off to work. Getting to work at about 7:45. I've tried to create 2 slots in my day, early morning and just after lunch, where I can not be in meetings. It doesn't always work out. It doesn't work out more than it does, to be honest, but I try and do that. And then I'm in meetings for the rest of the day, and normally after lunch I have a little bit of a gap to try and catch up on emails and do some preparation for meetings. And then I guess work starts when the meetings stop. Yeah, and that's what I do in the evenings. At home, I don't really have a very structured evening routine. Try to get to bed at around the same time. Spend time with my wife. Have dinner. I don't. Maybe just catch up on a little bit of sport on TV or news, and that's about it. Yeah, I try not to do emails too late into the evening.
Yeah.
So my mind can switch off.
Yes.
And I'm quite disciplined over weekends. So I might look at my emails first thing on Saturday morning or Sunday night, but I don't expect anybody to be responding to me or working over the weekend unless there's a specific function or event that's happening.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that's kind of like structured, but also flexible.
Exactly.
You can't be too rigid because otherwise you probably drive yourself insane.
Exactly.
So very finally, Andrew, what are you reading at the moment, or what would you suggest people read?
I'm actually reading Oscar Chalupsky's book at the moment. He's written a fascinating book about his sporting life, but now recovery from cancer, which is really inspiring. I do read other leadership books. I'm trying to find a way of moving away from, let's say, the superficial reading on the internet into something that
almost the scrolling type.
The scrolling type, because I think I'm already a little bit overhyped anyway, so that doesn't necessarily help me. I need to, especially in the evenings, I need to try and move away to actually sitting down and reading a hard copy book. I think that would calm me down a little bit more. So I know that that's an area of improvement I need to work on.
So that's been fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I really am honoured to have had you. You're an absolute legend, as I said at the beginning. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, George.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.